Ba-na-na, ba-na, ba-na, ba-na. Guardians of the Galaxy, Volume 3 spoiler talk. If you haven't seen Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, leave a like, get out of here, go watch the movie, and come back. I'm joined by my lovely lady friend Cam. We're doing a full spoiler talk on Guardians 3, and I just want to let you know, to be completely transparent, we may or may not have just filmed 30 minutes of
this whole video
that went down the drain.
And the audio didn't work. We're filming it with our podcast audio that we haven't used in like 70 years. Yeah. In case you didn't know, we have a podcast. We're working on bringing it back. And so we're like, hey, let's do it with the podcast setup. And then the audio didn't work.
Yep. Oh, I feel like the high evolutionary right now. No.
So that's really fun.
Oh, man. But yeah, we are here. We're running this back. We're doing a Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 spoiler talk from beginning to end. Before we do, though, Cam, what is like your overall consensus on this movie? Because you've never actually talked about it here on the channel yet. I am the only one who's done reviews. So let's hear a real quick review.
I loved it. I really did. If you don't know me very well, then you don't know that I'm like a very average Guardians enjoyer. Like I like the movies and I like the characters, but I'm not as obsessed with the movies as many Marvel fans. Like you'll find, specifically, I feel like a lot of fanboys very obsessed. I don't mean that in a derogatory way. Very obsessed with the Guardians. They're very high up on their list. Me, I'm just an average enjoyer of them. But I really, really love this one. Guardians 3 is definitely in my top 10 Marvel movies. I think it's a brilliant movie, and it's just really a really fun time when I'm not violently sobbing.
Yeah, this movie is an emotionally damaging film for sure. For those who don't know, it's in my top 4 favorite MCU movies. Check out my MCU ranking linked up above, and I have a lot to say. And again, we're gonna dive right in. Heavy spoilers, so if you haven't seen it, proceed with caution. You've been warned. The movie opens up with a young little baby rocket, and he's so sweet and innocent out of the gate. And
I want a baby Raccoon.
I know. They're so sweet. And we looked it up in the last one we filmed. What are they called again? A nursery?
Oh my god, a nursery!
Yeah, like so a bunch, like a litter of kittens, I believe, right? You've got, and then a nursery of raccoons. Or litter of puppies. Something of ravens. Yeah, we looked it up once.
An unkindness of ravens. What's the one for cobras?
A quiver of cobras. Oh, Cobra Kai never dies.
And a nursery of raccoons, which just is so sad when you think about baby Rocket.
Yeah, I mean, they really show us how cute and lovable he is from the start, and how innocent he is. That's the biggest thing. Then we get a great transition from that into old, current-day Rocket. They're at Nowhere, which is their new base, and the song Creep by Radiohead, the acoustic version, is playing, which I would say it's the most somber opening of the 3 Guardians films. Opens on like a downer of a note.
Bradley Cooper put some of his singing lessons to use.
He did. Very A Star Is Born of him.
Very much.
Yeah, and then we see him sort of walk into Peter's room, bar area, where he's basically drinking himself to sleep every night, it seems. They're all very down in the dumps right now.
Question, does Bradley Cooper only play tragic characters?
Before he played like all the comedic roles, but now, yes, it seems to be that way. Damaged characters.
Great.
So, something you're attracted to, I guess.
Hey!
You're big in these damaged characters. Whoa. Shots have been fired.
No need to be called out this much.
Bucky Barnes, where you at? No, anyway, moving on. The sort of inciting incident of this movie is when Adam Warlock comes out of nowhere and
or comes into nowhere.
Oh yeah. Oh shit. So that was pretty clean. Yeah, he comes into nowhere and he essentially solos the entire group of Guardians minus Star-Lord, which you pointed out.
He doesn't really touch Star-Lord, which is, I guess, good for him.
Yeah, good for Star-Lord. He gets some shots off on him, but
he decapitates Groot.
He completely discombobulates Nebula, and he basically bashes Drax's skull in. So that's lovely. He also damn near kills Rocket, as Rocket is like convulsing on the ground. And as we would come to find out, once they get him on the little like med bay, I'll call it, on the ship, he has like this kill switch in him on his heart, so they can't really do anything. And they have like a 48-hour period where they have to go try and find this key to unlock it in order to save their friend. And that's kind of our launching point for the movie.
They're trying to find this code to counteract this kill switch inside of Rocket. And they're like, why does Rocket have a kill switch? Because they don't really know anything about Rocket, because Rocket keeps everything kind of close to his chest.
Yeah, he's a very, keeps his private life confined inside himself.
And we find out exactly why in this movie.
Yeah, because it's filled with flashbacks. Shout out James Gunn for breaking our hearts through a very powerful way of telling the story. While they're on the mission to try and save Rocket, we get flashbacks to the past where we see how the High Evolutionary was abusive and tortured Rocket. But we also get a lot of sad scenes where we see Rocket making friends. We get a very heartbreaking scene where the otter names herself Lila. Then we've got Teefs and Floor the rabbit, and they all just they're harmless animals who have fun together, and they're friends.
Poor baby.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking what happens in that, and we'll talk about that in a second.
Meanwhile, all of our Guardians are going to not Oscorp. Wow, wrong corporation. My bad. Wrong O Space Corporation. Orgo Corp. They're going to this weird fleshy looking spongy flesh planet thing. Yeah. They're all in these little Among Us suits, which is kind of funny.
Godspeed, Spider-Man. I had to get that in there.
Oh, last time we didn't even talk about that. Like a really heart-wrenching but also embarrassing scene that Peter has where he thinks he's talking to just Gamora.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Yeah.
So funny, but also really sad.
It is sad. In the comedy in this movie, like, it works when it works.
Yeah.
Like it's shout out James Gunn for like balancing the humor with an extremely dark tone a lot of the times. But yeah, a lot of this movie, as they're headed to Orgo Corp, we see like the Ravagers board their ship, and Gamora comes in, and she's definitely different than the past, but she kind of slays.
That's my girl.
So it's funny seeing Peter try to be all macho
Gamora
and like win her over again.
I know.
Much like in Infinity War when he's like trying to emulate Thor. I am not. He like does the voice. That's funny. Star-Lord's awesome. We'll talk about Chris Pratt's acting later.
Gamora's so good. I love her. I think she's my favorite female Marvel character.
Valid.
I think
honestly.
She's also the one I'm most like.
Valid. Totally fair. I think you got that sassy, sarcastic attitude.
So true.
But yeah, so all the while, our friends end up, getting on this little space station. We get a funny interaction with the Nathan Fillion character. And Star-Lord wants to use his charm in order to...
his riz.
His riz, yeah, if you will. And Gamora's like, hell no. I'm just going to put my blaster to this person's head. That is totally you. That's our dynamic right there.
I don't know if you could riz somebody up, though.
I'd be too nervous. Yeah. I'd fold under the pressure. I'm not like that. But all the while, they end up getting what they need. That's the most important thing. But they fake us out with the deaths here. We see Drax get shot twice. Nebula gets shot, and she's like bleeding out from the mouth.
Spitting up blood, and I'm like, I didn't even know Nebula had blood inside of her to spit up. So that's crazy. Mantis is like crying. There's a lot going on.
There's a lot going on. This movie's heavy, guys. To go Back to the Future.
It's like a lot to watch your first time around because although they're faking us out with these like characters and like us thinking they're gonna die, we all went into this movie expecting at least one member of the Guardians to die. So whenever one of their lives was in danger, it was like, oh my god, is Drax about to drop dead right here being shot? Oh my god, is Nebula about to get her head ripped off? Like, you never know what's gonna happen.
They had us on edge constantly. It was a lot nicer on rewatch.
I wasn't stressed.
Yeah, which I forgot to mention up front. This is not many hours after our second viewing, but we were less stressed. It was more laid back, but it was still emotionally traumatizing.
I woke up this morning, and about an hour and a half after being awake, I had to go watch Guardians 3, which was a lot to deal with.
It was heavy.
After being awake for only an hour.
It was heavy, Doc. But yeah, no. That happens, and that sort of wraps up Act 1. They end up getting what they need. But then, they don't end up getting what they need. Sorry, we've done this video twice.
Well, they get what they think they need. They get the orb.
Yep. And then
when they go back on the ship, they're like reading through it. They see a bunch of holograms of Rocket getting tortured, and actually, it's really, really sad because when they're seeing this is their first time knowing what happened to Rocket. Nebula is like, this is worse than anything Thanos did to me, which is a big deal. Because she's hella tortured.
Yeah.
She's like top 3 most tortured characters in the MCU, like physically. And so they realize that the code that they're looking for to counteract the kill switch isn't there. It was erased literally that day. So the plot kind of repeats itself, but not in a bad way. They just now have to go to a different location to get the code out of some bald dude with like a computer in his head on this place called Counter Earth.
This is correct. They end up going there, and even though they all sort of know it's a trap, it's a face-off, according to Peter Quill.
It's a trap!
Yeah. Nice Star Wars reference there. But yeah, that's what happens. The whole second act's on Counter Earth. We get a lot of the humor in the movie here as well. We get the first ever F-bomb in an MCU movie. I was like clapping damn near the first time I saw it because it made me so happy they finally did it. You want to explain this scene? Go for it.
I will. So they take this, like, what animal is that person thingy, that their house, the car they take?
It's some sort of it's some like combination of a bunch of different
some
species,
weird thing. I couldn't tell what animal it was, but they take this person's car.
They get info from them, and they're like, "We're just gonna."
And Counter Earth, I think, is definitely still in like the 80s or 90s or whatever, because everything looks pretty old. Yeah. And so Nebula is trying to open the door to the car, and she's probably never seen a car before in her life. So she's like, it's one of those cars you have to hit the button to open the handle and stuff. And Peter's like, "No, press the button." Nope, no, the button. And then she's like, "Okay, now what?" And he's like, "Open the door." And it's really funny because that's something I would do.
I was thrilled to hear this F-bomb made the final cut of the movie.
It was really well delivered.
That is, I would be Nebula in that situation, and you would be, admittedly, Peter. You would be, yes.
1,000,000%.
Because I would be the one struggling with something.
And I'd be like, just use a brain cell. Yep. Just one brain cell and just open the door.
Yeah. That's all I gotta do. So they end up taking the car. They go to the High Evolutionary ship, and this is when we get the saddest flashback in the movie. The second saddest, maybe.
Yeah, second saddest.
Second saddest, if you count.
It's not a flashback. No, but yeah. Second saddest rocket scene, maybe.
Yeah. That's a good way to word it. So, in this little flashback, Rocket realizes that he was never going to this new planet.
Yes.
And the High Evolutionary basically is like, "You're worthless to me."
Sucks, dude.
He's despicable. He's a scumbag. He's awful. I hate his guts. And so Rocket's like, to hell with this. He realizes all his friends are going to get killed. He's like, "I'm making a key and I'm getting us out of here." And right as he makes the key and unlocks the door, Lila walks out. They hug
and they
share an embrace.
Time,
yep. And then it's cut so short by a gunshot to the back. And who's dead?
Lila.
She's dead. And I will say this, the screech that Rocket lets out, like the desperate cry of pain. Good. Sent chills down my spine. It's really bone chilling. Sad. One of the it was gut wrenching.
And it's a very gut wrenching scream. And then the High Evolutionary starts to make fun of him. He's like,
like call him a crybaby. Like I wanted to slap his face off there.
I've never been so prone to punch a man.
Yeah, and then Rocket ends up tearing up High Evolutionary's face, and High Evolutionary's goons just kill the other two animals.
And we don't even know it at first. Like his backup comes out of nowhere, and Rocket takes the High Evolutionary's gun and shoots them while they're trying to shoot Rocket, or so we think. Mm-hmm. And then when Rocket kills them, he turns around and the camera pans with him, and then we see Tieff's on the floor, and we're like, "Oh God, damn it!" And then the camera pans, and Floor is on the floor, and we're like, "Oh God, damn it!" And it's
really not okay.
So sad.
The trauma that Rocket experienced, especially having to relive it as the audience. Awful.
His only friends that he's ever known his entire life. The only people in his life that have never caused him harm. The people that got him through the past however many years of being tortured by the High Evolutionary. The only people that gave him his only good memories his entire life. Dead. And he feels like it's his fault. Even though they were going to die regardless, unfortunately.
Yep, they were. So, big bummer.
And then he has to run and escape, and he's just all sad, and sky is forever, and it's beautiful, and he just wanted to fly with his friends, and he...
And believe it or not, that's not the saddest moment in the movie.
No, it's not.
I actually cried harder the second time when we get to a certain moment coming up. But that's sad. Yeah, Rocket gets out. We get an action scene with Groot and Peter where they end up kicking ass. And
pretty sick. Really good action scene, I think, for Groot.
We get to see Groot like flying, which was cool. Like,
that was
literally
dope.
Went full on Pattinson Batman
and then they
glided down.
They kill the dude with the computer in his head.
He's a scumbag. They get what they need.
They kill him underwater, and I kind of feel like they did that so it wasn't as gory.
I think he was killed on impact, and they just dragged him.
Well, I know, but like the whole like shivving
his head being
under his head.
That was on purpose. They were kind of masking it for sure. But all the while, by the way, Mantis, Nebula, and Drax are on the High Evolutionary ship.
Yep.
So they're
just causing chaos.
And by the way, Gamora was with Rocket the whole time on the Guardian ship.
Gamora
elsewhere
is with
on the
Rocket
planet.
fighting
Yeah.
Adam.
Yeah.
Drax and Mantis are going to the High Evolutionary ship, and they meet up with Nebula, and all three of them eventually jump on the ship. Meanwhile, Peter and Groot are jumping off left the High Evolutionary ship. So the team's not really on the same game plan if you think about it.
And the whole time this is happening, the planet is exploding.
Yep, and while we're at it, the High Evolutionary is exploding the planet, killing thousands and thousands and thousands of species that have lived full lives. It's really great.
It's chaotic, to say the least.
And Adam Warlock's mom dies.
And
there's a lot going on, but in a good way.
Yep. It's wild. So
there's a lot happening.
I'm just laughing because I'm keeping this in, but like it's funny to me because we already said all this stuff.
We're about to get to the part where we haven't really
talked
about
to catch up though, where we haven't filmed, and so
we're on the same
pacing
in terms of time.
This is true. It's wild how that works out.
So then, so they get the computer out of the bald guy's head. I'll carry it on for here. You need to take a break, maybe.
I need to take a quick breather.
So they get the computer out of the bald guy's head, and Gamora has a really horrid crash landing on the ship, and they pick up Peter and Groot, and they plug in the little computer to Rocket to try and save him.
Now can we talk about? No, we're not going to rush through this. We're talking about how sad this death is right now.
Oh yeah,
not death, but it literally feels like a death.
Well, he does die. His heart stops.
It does. You're right. He briefly does die. He maxes.
So they have what they need. They have the thing that's supposed to fix Rocket, and they plug it in, and everything's supposed to go good, but it's not going fast enough, and Rocket's heart is failing, and it's just really sad. And then we get a little flash of light, and Rocket is in like this heaven sort of.
Yeah, he is. And I'm gonna
Deathly Hallows Part 2, where Harry Potter's like half dead.
Yeah, so Rocket goes, and this is where we actually need to slow the pace down. It's sad. So Rocket goes and he sees all of his old friends that were killed on the ship, and like immediately I start to tear up just because of how sad it is and the weight it carries. And he's like, he puts his paw to his face, and
his
just the
tiny little paw.
Pure emotion, like he's just so shattered. And then he feels like it's his fault, and he's like just asking
like,
forgiveness.
I'm so sorry.
And then, like, in real time, Star-Lord's, like, yelling at the top of his lungs. Chris Pratt's acting is so good. And Rocket's, like, flatlining. And then we cut back to the heavenly setting, and he's like...
Lila's like, it's not your fault. Like, it's okay. Like, the sky is forever, and it is beautiful, and I'm flying with my friends. And then we see Teefs and Floor behind her. And then Rocket delivers the most heart-wrenching, heartbreaking, depressing, sad line I've ever seen and heard in my entire life. Where he's crying, and he's like, can I come? And I'm like,
yeah, he's like, can I come with you? And it's like, oh my God, I'm gonna literally jump out the window.
Redacted.
It's just so upsetting.
I need to see Bradley Cooper in the studio.
Man, one of the most heartbreaking lines in the MCU right there when he says that. Oh my God. And then you know what she says?
Not yet.
Yeah. Doesn't she say something like one of the best lines in the film? I believe she says like
he starts walking forwards.
Like
towards...
it's been your story the whole time. You just didn't know until now.
Oh my God!
Isn't that the line?
I forgot about that. Yeah. He's like, can I come with you? And then she's like, but not yet. And he's like, why? And she's like, you still have a purpose. And she gives him a hug, and she's like, it's been your story all along. You just didn't know it yet.
Yeah.
And then she's like, oh, my sweet raccoon. And he's like, I'm not a raccoon. And then he wakes up. He's alive.
Yeah, and then he wakes up, and then we didn't miss a beat. No, it is happy that he's alive. We got this little cute scene. And then
Star-Lord was like giving him like heart palpitations or whatever, CPR.
He's giving heart palpitations? I'm kidding.
You know what I mean. Yeah, he was trying to get his heart started.
Staying alive.
And... shout out to Chris Pratt. Great acting in this scene where he's screaming. I love when an actor acts with saliva and spit because it just feels very real.
So you're a Jonathan Groff fan.
Absolutely. 1,000,000%.
Yeah, so that was a heartbreaking scene. And then on second watch, too, especially a little detail we noticed more, especially you pointed out, is Rocket comes on the comms and he like says something to Nebula, and then you see her like breaking down the most that he's alive because they had to spend like 5 years together during the blip.
So when Rocket's, he's awake, he's fine, then they finally contact Nebula, who they find out is on the High Evolutionary ship, and they're like, why on God's green earth are you on that ship? We're not on that ship. And then Rocket's like, the important thing is that we're all okay. And they're like, oh my God, Rocket? You're alive? And we see Nebula start to cry, but not Mantis and Drax. And I didn't realize this until the second viewing. I was like, oh my God, it's literally because they were the only two alive for those 5 years after Infinity War. Completely forgot about that. Completely forgot about that. That little scene that we get where they sit on the ship and they're holding each other's hands. So sad. They were all each other had for so long. So they got so close.
Tragic, really, Cam. It is.
She was so happy.
Yep. We get some sweet moments on that ship, though, with those 3 characters. With Max.
Right.
I almost said Max. I don't know why. With Drax. There's little kids, and we get to see like a little falling out between Mantis and them. They call like Drax stupid, and kind of going back to a point we talked about earlier in the last video, which is never going to see the light of day because the audio was corrupt.
Yeah.
It's easy for this movie in particular, or what they capitalize on, is not killing a character fully, but giving us the feeling of their absence and making us appreciate them more because of a perilous situation.
You don't always have to kill a character to appreciate the character, and I think that that's a very important like thing to realize, especially if you compare this movie to Endgame. Like, I feel we're just gonna use Natasha as an example. You know, her death, yes, it was necessary, but also at the same time, you know, it was so fast and yada 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 and all of these things.
Yeah.
And it's like you don't always need to give this character such a harsh and sad death for us to be able to appreciate them. Just all you really need to do is tell us about them, tell us their story, and that'll do it.
Yeah, and there's a line later in the film we'll talk about that's heartbreaking regarding Drax, but they do a good job with both Drax and Rocket in particular, I feel, of making us care so much
and
about
Mantis,
them. And
for
all
sure.
of them, Mantis, Nebula. Everyone's come so far since the first time we saw them in the franchise. But that sort of wraps out the second act, and then we head into the third act where the Guardians call in Kraglin for help, and they get the whole nowhere base with Cosmo and everyone to come help out. They're approaching the High Evolutionary ship to go save their friends. We get some cool action where they break onto the ship. That was all great to see. The High Evolutionary's gone full cuckoo now. He literally...
Oh, yeah, he's wild.
He's like, there is no God. That's why I stepped in.
Yeah, he's like losing it.
When he said that, and then his crew started to turn on, they're like mutiny, and he just killed them all. I was like, this guy
They were like, you have an obsession,
scary.
and it's unhealthy.
So the High Evolutionary is off his rocker.
He's a
little cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. And the Guardians end up breaking into the ship, and all the while, Mantis, Nebula, and Drax have sort of tamed these beasts.
I don't even know what they're called.
I don't know what they're called either.
Really
they're huge, and
Mantis
came in clutch yet again and tamed them, and they end up getting out safely, meeting up with their fellow Guardians in this fiery setting where we get to see them all have this slow-mo epic scene. Leading into one of the coolest action scenes, I would say best shot action scene in the MCU, and I say that with my chest.
That's very fair.
Peter ends up playing No Sleep Till Brooklyn by the Beastie Boys. And like Gamora and all of them are like, if we don't leave right now, we're gonna die. And then Rocket looks back and he flashes back to when he was there, and he's like,
I'm tired
I'm done
of
running. And it's
then
like, oh hell yeah,
he goes to fight all these people, and then they all like start to fall in line and follow him. And then Gamora is the last one. She's like reluctantly, she's like, oh my god, it's giving very much. I'm gonna die surrounded by idiots.
Yeah, so we end up seeing all their faces. They slowly start to turn with them. That leads into the coolest action scene I've seen in a long time in the MCU. No Sleep Till Brooklyn is blasting. We see everyone get their time to shine. We got Groot.
Take.
Yeah, it's one take, of course. And then Rocket ends up coming up on Groot's shoulder. We see that slow-mo scene of Rocket
really
in the
cool
air.
Scene of Rocket.
Gamora's eating, Nebula's eating, Star-Lord has some moves. Everyone is getting their time to shine, and they destroy these fools. It is so satisfying.
Slaying.
Yeah, it is such a dope scene. I could watch that on a loop when it comes out on YouTube, or digital.
I'm so hyped.
I'm so excited to just rewatch that.
When I was watching it for the first time, and I was like, once I realized that it was about to be like a one-shot take, I was like, oh my god, this is so cool.
It's dope.
Very impressive. Very impressive fight choreography. I want to know, like, you know how they do those things on Disney Plus where it's like the behind the scenes of movies and stuff?
Yep.
I really hope we get to see like behind the scenes of what it was like to film that and how long it took.
Yeah. Thank you, James Gunn. That's what I say to that.
Shout out to James Gunn.
Thank you. I think we're actually caught up to where we can say new things now.
We are. We have finally reached where we...
That's extremely exciting for me.
Didn't end last time.
So yeah, hit the like button if you guys are here. No Sleep Till Brooklyn is a banger. So here's what happens now. The Nowhere Station sort of syncs up with the High Evolutionary ship, and Cosmo's using her power to like unload everyone as fast as they can. But while this is happening, of course, someone's behind, and it's Rocket. And he ends up seeing a nursery of raccoons. And he looks at the label, and it says raccoon, and he has like this moment of realization. He knows
he's a raccoon.
And he's like, he like embraces that he's a raccoon, and it's such a powerful moment.
First watched this movie, and we got to the scene where he like opens the cage and like he like picks up all the raccoons, all the little raccoons, and he's holding them all. At first I thought he was like gonna leave all the other animals there. I was like, oh my god, you can't do that.
I was also kind of like, what's about to happen here? There's no way they're gonna leave them behind, right? That's kind of what I thought.
But the high evolutionary shows up and is using his little powers to, like 11 Stranger Things, to just throw Rocket all over the place. And what is...
And then, dare I say, we get our most iconic Rocket line ever?
Yeah. He's like, you're nothing. You're vermin. You're just a pebble in my path.
He's projecting on his insecurities onto Rocket pretty much.
Rocket lands and he's like... Oh, no. He calls him 89P13. Yeah. And then Rocket's like, the name's Rocket. Rocket Raccoon.
One of those hype moments. That's like Rocket's moment right there. I love that. And then all the other Guardians come in and they start just destroying this fool. And then who gets the final blow? Gamora. She stabs him.
As she should. That's my girl.
And then they take the dude's face off. It peels right off. We see the damage that was done to him when Rocket clawed his face, which I didn't really...
young Rocket.
I didn't fully put that together, I don't think, or process it until our second viewing for whatever reason. Like
it's more disturbing than Red Skull for sure.
Without question.
Yeah.
You can see it looks like Two-Face from The Dark Knight. Yeah, it's real messed up and gross.
Does.
And like I feel like this movie again, I talked about this more in my non-spoiler, but like kids, like little kids under the age of 10, like this, there's traumatizing stuff.
Oh, you could not have seen this as a child. You would not be able to sleep for months.
It would have messed me up for sure. But they end up killing the High Evolutionary. Or no, they don't. They don't end up killing him. They leave him, and it's a great moment for Rocket.
The assumption is he's dead. His ship was up.
Yeah, Drax is like, kill him, and Rocket's like, I can't. I'm a friggin' guardian of the galaxy.
We could have gotten a second F-bomb, but that's
okay. Man. Friggin' is good, though, because of the callback to where he's like, what did Groot say or whatever? And he's like, he said we're the friggin' Guardians of the Galaxy, and he didn't say friggin'.
Yeah, that's good.
So that was a sweet callback, and then they all end up dipping off the ship. Cosmo's losing her power. They're getting all the animals, though, instead of just the humans. It's really funny. They're almost all off the ship.
It's giving like Noah's Ark.
Yeah, in a way, I kind of thought of that. So
everyone's trying to jump ship, and Peter's the last one because he loses his stupid MP4, which is like so irritating for him as a character. Every time he's about to lose,
it's his Zune player.
Whatever he listens to music to, it's so irritating because like you can just buy another one. You really can. Cosmo, her telekinesis, she passes out. She's been using her powers too much. So the ships are not connected anymore. So Peter has to jump like through space. And as we all know, that does not work. He starts to get all icically
and puffy up.
You know how
Let's talk about this, by the way. Adam Warlock saves him, by the way. So they almost faked him out. But Adam Warlock saves him, which is a cool moment for Adam Warlock because it's like, he was saved by Groot earlier, and Adam was like, why are you doing this? And they're like, because everyone deserves a second chance. So it was cool. But can we break this down? I want to just talk about it.
Before you break it down, Kraglin finally learns to control his little arrow with his whistle, and we see Yondu.
We do. Yeah.
Do you think that's a new footage, or do you think it's reused footage?
I think that they brought him in for a day. Yeah, definitely. He's in like all of James Gunn's movies.
Very small moment. That's why we forgot it for a second, but very sweet. And now he can do the whole... I can't whistle, but...
Yeah, he can do it. He kills it.
And he solos all of them.
He almost solos, because who has redemption there? Cosmo.
Cosmo's a good dog.
Finally gets called a good dog. That's a sweet moment. Thank you for bringing that up. That was all on Nowhere. Like on the Nowhere station.
Go back to breaking down Star-Lord's death now.
So he's like puffing up like the ant in Prisoner of Azkaban, like when she gets, goes up into the sky. Star-Lord's literally doing that. And so he's saved by Adam Warlock, but I want to like seriously break this down. So he lived, is that because of his genes where like his dad was Ego? Because anyone else would have died. I don't question it. I'm not like trying to let it bother me, but he would have died.
The way I see it is just that Adam got to him just in time.
Okay.
Like if he was out there for like just a few more seconds, it would have been over.
My reasoning for it was that he like is half human, half
that could also be part
God.
of it.
But then I was also thinking like this has happened to him before. Like in the first Guardians, he damn near died the same way. And then in the second movie as well, he almost died the same way. But
he is always almost dying. Jesus.
In space, yeah. But Yondu saved him. But that's what I'm wondering. Like Yondu put the little mask on him so he wouldn't die. And so I'm like, they really, honestly, I do. This is like one little thing I have in the movie. I don't think they should have puffed his face up because it just wasn't like. He looked like he was just soulless and dead, and so they went a little too far with that. For him to then be alive.
I just realized we didn't see his helmet at all in this movie. His little.
Ooh.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I do know what you're talking about. So that's interesting.
But Adam Warlock saves him.
It didn't irritate me, but Adam Warlock does save.
They do a little, the hands of David thing. Here, put your arm out.
Yeah,
you know what I'm
the
talking
little
about?
finger thing.
Yeah. They do a little symbolism to that, and Adam saves him. And so that's a nice little redemption arc for Adam because he has been trying to kill him this whole movie, and he's really bad at it. He's kind of nerfed, but I didn't mind it. I don't know anything about comics.
Honestly, we talked about this in the last cut that we filmed that will never see the light of day, where they had a line early in the movie where they were like, he came out of his cocoon too early. I think that was intentional so that he wouldn't be at full power. He's literally like a baby in like a man body. Yeah. So he's still learning life and human interaction, which is cool.
He has a pet.
Yep, he does. He has a little pet, so that was sweet. But this kind of wraps out the movie in a way. After this, we get a sweet little moment with the Guardians, and then
they're all hugging each other.
And we see Peter sort of tell them, hey, I'm going back to Earth. Like, I've been running my whole life since I was 8. I'm going to go back and, like, I'm going to essentially see my grandpa. And then Mantis is like, I've been doing whatever Ego wanted and then what the Guardians wanted, so I'm going to go do me. And Drax is like, let me come with you. You need protection.
Sweet Drax.
But obviously, Drax and Nebula end up staying on Nowhere. Peter goes away.
Yep.
Mantis goes away. And who is the new leader of the Guardians?
Rocket.
Rocket, baby.
Love him. He's captain.
Really cool moment.
Finally settles that the little debate that Peter and Rocket always have in every time we see them, where it's like, I'm the captain. No, I'm the captain.
I think it's more of a passing the mantle, because Peter was like, you'll be a better leader than I ever was.
Yeah.
So it's like, ooh.
So Rocket's now captain of the Guardians.
And what do we get? A sweet line from Groot where we actually understand him. I love you guys. I believe is what he says.
They spoke our language.
It's so sweet. It hit right in the feels, finally hearing him speak.
And then, for me, one of the most devastating parts of the movie, Gamora leaves.
Oh, this is actually before all this.
Is it before?
Yeah, yep.
Gamora's leaving, and her and Peter are leaving each other. And they walk past each other, and then they stop. And then Gamora's like, I bet we were fun. And then Peter's like, you have no idea.
Yeah, like,
or you wouldn't believe. I forget what he says.
I don't know. It's one of those two. I don't remember.
He's like, you wouldn't believe. Just rips my heart right out of my chest. I love them. They're probably one of, if not my favorite, Marvel couple. Mm-hmm. And I think the most heartbreaking part about it is, like you say, very similar to La La Land. Unfortunately.
Right people, wrong time.
Yeah, and
wrong timeline.
They both go their opposite ways, but their endings are still happy, which is just so frustrating because they could be happy together, but they're just as happy apart. And throughout the course of the movie, one of, like, the little sub themes is how Peter keeps saying to Gamora, like, you may not be my Gamora, but you are still the Gamora that I knew. Like, at one point, you're still the Gamora that wants a family, and that family could be us. And Gamora's like, shut up. But Gamora did find a family. Just this time, unfortunately, it wasn't with the Guardians. She has a family with her Ravengers, and we see that when she goes back onto her ship with them, and they're like, welcome home, and she's so happy, and she's smiling so much, and it's really hard and sad to see, like, her being just as happy with them as our other Gamora was when she was with the Guardians. And it's just, you just have to accept the fact that she's happy.
Yeah, it's like I said when I first watched it, it's like a La La Land type of ending where it's heartbreaking, but it's right for these versions of the character. They had in another life, they had that romance. So it is sad for sure. But then we get sort of the bittersweet ending, which I think is probably the best use of music in these three films and maybe in the MCU overall. Dog Days Are Over, that song, it starts playing, Florence and the Machine. It's so, like, the way I describe it is like feel good. Like, if you injected me with a shot of feel good with some bittersweet as like the little teaspoon afterwards, like, I was an emotional wreck watching it because it was like everyone's saying farewell. We see Mantis walking away and Drax literally crying, like waving goodbye to her.
I think Mantis and Drax are platonic soulmates.
Yeah, that's fair.
Like, they're just, they're tied together,
Yeah, they are forever, and that was sweet to see. But one line that broke me, and again, we'll get through everyone. So Mantis goes away, and she's gone. Drax waves goodbye, but then Nebula has a line.
That
crushes my soul.
When she's like, Drax, I need you to stay here with me because I'm rebuilding Nowhere. She's like, I'm not leading the Guardians. I'm rebuilding Nowhere, and I need you here with me because Like, I realized something about you today, Drax. You weren't born to be a destroyer. You were born to be a dad. Ooh. And I just about got up out of my theater and left. Yeah. That is the most... there's not even words for how that line made me feel. I was like, oh my God.
Yeah, it's...
How did they make me care about Drax? How?
James Gunn, baby. What can you say? So that happens, and then... we slowly start to see him warm up over the course of the music playing. Groot's the one that starts the dancing. Rocket starts dancing. And then Drax...
Groot's always been dancing.
Yeah, he always has been. He's a dancer from birth. And then, especially this iteration of him. And then Drax finally ends up dancing. Great callback, because one of his first lines in the movie is like, dancing's for idiots.
Yeah.
Which I did not notice that was his first line the first time around.
Me either. Second time around, we noticed it.
We looked at each other, yeah. So that's a really cool callback.
He's like, and then he breaks and he's like...
Yeah, so he's dancing. Real sweet. We see Gamora again with the Ravagers there, and she's all happy with her family. And then we see a surprisingly crushing moment in the movie. We see Star-Lord on Earth. He goes to his home, and then he knocks on the door, and the caretaker answers, and he's like, "Oh, I'm just looking for I believe Jason Quill's the name or something. If I forgot the name, forgive me." And then he sees his grandpa, and his grandpa's crying, and then he's like, "It's good to see you, Grandpa." That moment with the music, it breaks my heart because I feel so happy for him. He's finally got to see his real family again after all those years.
Grandpa.
Old people are
Old
sweet.
Old people really get to me, guys. I can't do this.
Crying. It's okay. And then, the movie ends with them dancing and happy, and it's such on a positive high note. I couldn't think of a better way to end the movie.
I think the reason that the ending to this movie is so good, and we cry while watching it, even though it's happy, is because I think every single person went into this movie expecting people to die and expecting for a sad ending and just expecting to be devastated by the fact that the Guardians aren't together anymore. But that's not the case. James Gunn gave us a whole 180 and was like, you think you know what's going to happen, but you don't. And I'm going to give you something 10 times better than you could ever imagine.
Yeah, I mean, he fully won. He won. This is the best MCU trilogy to me, and this is a perfect send-off to all these characters. It's a beautiful movie. I adore it. We both do. And then we got 2 post-credit scenes. The first shows Rocket being the new leader of the Guardians, the group being Rocket, Groot, Cosmo, Kraglin, Adam Warlock, and the little child from the ship.
Who looks like she belongs in a Sia music video.
Yeah, so that's them, and they play Come and Get Your Love. They're talking about their favorite musical act. Loved that callback. I don't think we need to see another iteration with this characters. Good. I think that was just to show that the Guardians still exist and they're out there, but we don't need Guardians 4 with them.
Yeah, it
just wouldn't be the same. I think they can maybe show up in an Avengers type movie, but even then I don't think
there will always be Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah.
And then the second postie,
the very end, it's Star-Lord with his grandpa eating cereal.
And he's like, do I really have to mow this lady's lawn? He's very domesticated, which I think is good. I think it's something he needs for sure. And then it's kind of a nonsense post-credit scene, really, but the end of it gives us the legendary Star-Lord will return.
Which I don't know how to feel about.
I don't know how to feel about it either.
Made a good point, though, that he's on Earth so he could pop up in something.
Yeah, it was funny because when we first watched it, Chris was like, before the post-credit scene, he was like, I'm good. I don't need to see Star-Lord ever again.
I said that. I said we don't need to see any of them, not even Star-Lord. None of them again.
And then it was like, legendary Star-Lord will return.
What?
I was like, oh, damn.
I was like, what the hell?
But no, I don't know what that means. A lot of times I feel like Marvel puts that in their movies just to keep people engaged in Marvel movies. Yeah. But, I mean, he is on Earth now, right? So, where's he from? Missouri?
Yeah.
He's from Missouri.
Mm-hmm.
He's on Earth now, so if anything really attacks Earth in the future, he is there, and he will always be Star-Lord. He'll always be someone who wants to help. So I think that if anything attacks Earth, he'll be there to help.
Well, I just think they realized that they did that because Chris Pratt's one of the biggest movie stars, and they were like, we want to keep you around in case we ever want to bring you back.
I can fully see in
10 years from now,
in a future movie, something's attacking Earth. Sam Wilson needs to find the help of people. Then he's like, what about that one weird space dude? Yeah,
what if Star-Lord pulled up in the Avengers? I wouldn't mind that.
Very Scott Lang style, where it's hey, I'm here to help.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind that at all. Would not mind that at all. But I think that is going to do it. If you made it, hit that like button.
Please, genuinely, because we have to refilm the first 30 minutes
hit the like
this.
button. It would mean a lot. It's a beautiful film. I love it. I hope you guys enjoy it as well. Stay tuned for the podcast coming back soon. Hit the like button. Comment again your thoughts down below. Spoiler filled. Where will we see these characters again if we ever see them again? And run fast for your mother, fast for your father, run your sisters and your brothers.
You just don't know the words at all. You're just making words up.
The dog days are over. Peace.